Pemaquid Communications, innovative, accessible web design and development from offices in Portland, Maine. On the web at pemaquid.com.
Welcome. This is our Afterthoughts segment where we keep our guests around from our broadcast show for a little additional conversation and hopefully some more candid thoughts. Today with us we have Fletcher Kittredge, the CEO of GWI, and even more importantly that he is one of the 2011 Mainebiz Business Leaders of the Year. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around for the Afterthoughts. We breezed through our 8.5 minutes on the broadcast part, and we wanted to spend some more time talking. We were just talking a little bit on the break about, we definitely want to get into your thoughts about the future of the Internet, but before we do that, I even want to talk about the future of what's happening immediately in Maine, get a better sense of where we are with the Third Ring Binder project, how that's going to move forward. It was interesting. I mean, you've become, I liken you to a missionary who's out there now. You're actually out there preaching the gospel of broadband, and you even go out there with your PowerPoint called "A Ray of Economic Sunshine for Maine's Future. Broadband expansion provides an opportunity for growth." I mean, that's pretty positive stuff. It's interesting, and you say Mainers are passionate about our state. We have nearly unrivaled quality of place. We have an incredibly hardworking people. Our real estate, especially rural, is far cheaper than many other places. And then you throw on top of that, if we can have all those things and the kind of broadband access, you say we're poised for significant growth, right?
Yeah, not at Maine in particular, but I think that things are probably in a better situation even in a worldwide state.
All right.
I've been doing this for 30 years now, and one of the things about the Internet is it's still in its infancy. It's still really, the underlying infrastructure is still being built. It is going to become three things that are vitally important. It's going to become far faster than it is now, far faster, many times faster. Two is it's going to become far more reliable. And the third is, in terms of, particularly measured against the value that it gives, it's going to get a lot cheaper. But
I didn't hear you say ubiquitous, though. Is it going to be everywhere?
Yes. And that has to happen. Uniform is hard.
Yeah.
And that's something that's going to require a lot of work and a great deal of attention by Maine. But if you take those three things, and when those three things happen, it can be used in a way, a different way than it's being used now, in a very powerful way. And I think that will take what's Maine's great economic disadvantage, which is the distances between the different parts of Maine and Maine from places like New York, Boston, and Washington, and shrink those massively. So in many cases, more than we can probably comprehend, they essentially disappear. And that will give the ability, when people are making choices where to live and where to work, that will give them the ability to choose Maine in a way that they never have before.
But that's still, for those products and services that are Internet-based, not necessarily having.
I disagree.
Okay,
I think
we still get that image in our mind. Well, yeah, but I still can't.
And
make
I know,
things,
and I know, and that is an image that it's hard to shake, and a mindset that is hard to shake, and it may take yet another generation. But I think you get generational changes every 5 or 10 years now, rather than 30s.
Right.
For our children and you know our grandchildren and the ones in between to really take advantage of it. But those people who are already out there, they're starting. You're getting the cohort that are graduating from college right now understand the Internet in a way we don't.
How do they understand it differently? What will their applications be?
That's a really interesting question. There are lots of things that I probably could kind of understand. I understand the infrastructure part, like wireless and mobility. I could understand before that happened what the significance of having a smartphone, having essentially what would have 10 years ago been a powerful computer that you can carry around in your palm of the hand, is connected all the time. I did not really visualize the iPhone or that sort of stuff. Things like social media. I could understand the infrastructure. It really took kids who were growing up with this stuff to come up with things like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and that sort of stuff. My guess is that high-end video conferencing will be transformative, and it will really cut down on the set of travel that people need to really participate. My guess is communications will get to the point where you can be someone who would have to work in a high-rise in the financial district in New York City.
Right.
You could have that person live in a small coastal town in Maine, and it would be as if they're there.
Right.
Someone could practice medicine from that small town in the mountains in an incredible way. And I think the combination of communication.
It's kind of like creating the new version of the mill, in effect.
Yes. Yeah.
Where you have that stuff happening. It can happen anywhere. But then you have those smaller businesses that populate themselves around the mill, so to speak.
Absolutely.
That's always been the model.
Absolutely.
And even the internet model will be that.
You know, we really like the data center thing because it's a key part of the infrastructure, and it's something we understand. It's conceptually very easy, and there's an immediate demand for it.
Right.
My guess is other things are going to come along that are a little bit outside of my knowledge domain, so I can't really visualize now, but I'm sure if you went down to MIT right now and talked to the undergraduates who are the really who are you know, really in their creative prime, you'd find things that they're just like, wow.
One thing I wanted to ask you to make sure we get in here, it's interesting that this big change is happening. It's happening. It's occurring while we sit here. It's coming. We have to be able to find the right kinds of applications for it. And it was interesting in the profile on you in Mainebiz, it asked you what one of your Maine's biggest challenges are, and you were quoted saying, "It's change averse. If we don't get ahead of change, we don't have any control over what happens."
Yes.
So these two things are on a collision course. Change is happening, but you're saying that, gee, Maine doesn't like change much. But how do we get Maine to do that, get ahead of change?
All change isn't bad.
Right. Right.
But it is
interesting.
No, certainly not. But there is, and any change you need to be careful and look at. There are going to be positives and negatives for almost anything. Some things are totally negative.
Yeah.
There are a few things that are totally positive, but I haven't run across one that I can think of right. So you know, you do need, when something comes along, not to be swept up in it and be aware. But I'm just struck across the political spectrum. To a large extent, Maine is the way it is because it's been a little bit slow to change, and people like things the way they are.
Have other rural states been able to be more flexible, more agile towards change?
Certainly,
and they've been able to capitalize on it?
Well, the one that sticks out in my mind, of course, it would be North Carolina.
Right.
Which is, if you go back to 1960, when I was born, was a much poorer state and much worse educated than Maine and all these sorts of things. And they set out with a deliberate plan and you know, built the research triangle part, really invested in education. And I think it's hard to look at the great sweep of the last 50 years for North Carolina, but not feel that all in all it's been really good for them.
Is that the key to the changing the change averseness of Maine, is the investing in education?
I was just reading something that is a quotation from Daniel Patrick Moynihan that said, if you want economic development, what you do is you start a great university and wait 200 years. And I don't think we've already, you know, there's actually some pretty good universities already in Maine. The University of Maine.
Yeah, they're good. It's a 200-year piece that's got me above.
Well, you don't have. We're already into that 200 years. University of New England is really a dynamic, rapidly growing, very interesting, and the University of Maine system is generating some really interesting ideas.
And that's why it's that tying that together with the third ring binder stuff. Make sure we have that infrastructure there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my guess is the process has started, but I think the economic future for Maine is probably brighter than people realize. But I also think we need to realize that the world is changing and the pace of change is picking up, and things aren't going to be whether we want them to be the way they were or not, they're not going to be.
Right.
And what I meant, and what I was trying to say before was, if things are going to change, and you can be aware of how they're changing and look forward, you really can pick and choose what part of the future is going to come to Maine. Do we want the good jobs or the bad jobs? And we're probably not as far off as people think. We've built a state that enough people want it to live here that because we've got wonderful advantages, we can keep those advantages, and we can have significant economic growth.
Right, right. We just have to put it together into a plan, market it, make sure people know it.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wrap it right there. Thank you again. We could spend hours talking about this. I love talking about this stuff.
Me too.
And congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you all.
Combined with robotics will be really powerful. And one thing people really aren't paying as much attention to, I think, is the advances in robotics. And I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out, but I think we're going to see a lot in the next 10 years. My guess is that the combination of generating power in rural areas, though every form of power generation does have drawbacks, the combination of becoming and the advantages of consuming that power locally, so you're not building lots of transmission lines, which are expensive and inefficient, combined with